Hello Rayclass, welcome to my Path of Exile build guide for the third build I have played in Sanctum League, and this is my at Series Disfavor Ancestral Protector Chieftain. This build started as kind of a meme idea. I just wanted to stack a whole lot of melee strike range to see my ancestral totems whacking stuff from across the screen, and I didn't really think it would turn out nearly as good as it has, but it has turned out to be one of my favorites, and I think it's a really fun and interesting build, and it's a lot different than anything else I've played. As usual, you'll find a path of building in the video description so you can browse all the details at your leisure. We're just clearing a pit of the Chimera in the back here with Delirium, and we get through the boss all the way on Delirium, so that's a slightly interesting map, I guess. As you can see, this build somehow has like really nice clear, despite essentially being a default attack on totems. The range and the multiple strike targets and the built-in splash, you essentially drop some totems in the middle of the screen and they will just like instantly wipe pretty much the entire screen. They cover a really large area. We have a lot of attack speed because of some different totem buff sources we're stacking and stuff. We'll get more into that when we go into my hideout and go through all the gear. The build's got kind of mediocre survivability. It's good against hits because we've got like 55k armor and Molten Shell, but we are Petrified Blood with no real solid sources of damage over time mitigation, so big damage over times can kind of wipe us pretty quickly. It's got pretty good damage, depending on what's up at the time. Your damage ranges anywhere from like 6 million to 12 million DPS, so average it out, you're probably somewhere around 9 million average DPS, with some pretty high spikes when you get everything to align nicely. As you would expect from a totem build, it's a really nice Sanctum farmer, so I've been running a lot of Sanctums on this character as well. This is probably like the fastest I've ever gotten to level 95 just doing the Sanctum Blaster Atlas strategy, and only died 5 times to level 95. You're good for pretty much all content in the game other than Ubers. This is not a good character for Ubers. It's kind of a well-rounded character. It doesn't have either the crazy damage or the crazy defense that's kind of required for Ubers. And similar to that animate weapon build, I'm finding one of the biggest bottlenecks in these builds that aren't direct damage from you is, unless you're using like quickly resummonable temporary minions with Blessed Rebirth, it's just really hard to keep your guys alive sometime. Like Shaper Balls in Uber Shaper just wipe my totems out really fast. One of the biggest sort of annoyances to this build is that there's quite a long delay between when you drop an Ancestor totem and when it actually starts firing. It seems like it's quite a bit longer delay compared to like a spell totem when it starts firing after summoning. You pop your totems, and it seems like it's about almost a full second before the little spirits actually pop out of the top of them and start attacking anything, so that can be slightly annoying, but regardless, great clear, decent enough single target for anything other than Ubers, and just a really fun, unique build that I've had a lot of fun playing. So I'll let some more of this clear footage play out, and I'll see you in the hideout in a minute.
I cannot do this yet. The emptiness shattered like ice, and through each crack rushed the tumultant mass, carving their closer existence with the desperate ferocity that attends every fight for life. Even the stars themselves began to vanish behind the tangle of grasping limbs and screaming mouths. Yet there was no predator but the one that lurked in the shadow of each newborn mind.
I find the struggle for supremacy grippingly infinite.
Alright, welcome back guys. Here we are in my hideout, and it shouldn't take too long to go through this build because really everything in it is pretty simple. It's kind of a basic build and just combines a couple different mechanics to scale our damage and everything pretty nicely while getting us good clear. So, the core item of the build is the at Series Disfavor here. It gives a lot of weapon range, obviously, is sort of the big selling point, and that extra quality on socketed support gems is pretty solid depending on what you put in it as well. When I was sort of thinking up this build, I was struggling a little bit with how I was going to deal with mana issues, but then I happened to find this at Series Disfavor with Life Tap corrupted on trade. You're probably not going to be able to get your hands on one of these realistically. I managed to buy this one for only like 8 divs, I think, and it's really high DPS with the Life Tap. There's only like 2 others on trade with Life Tap and good DPS right now, and they're like 50 Divines and 99 Divines, I think, so you might not be able to get something like this. So you might have to do something else to try and solve your mana problems, but I've just gone with Life Tap on everything since I ended up with this Life Tap Disfavor. Your helmet is just a rare helmet, and you want to try and get, any of the Ancestral Totem enchants if you can. I got the attack speed one. I think that's probably the best one, because that makes everything really smooth. We are using a Skin of the Lords, and we are doing Elemental Overload on this build. It wasn't really realistic to go crit as a Chieftain compared to like a Slayer with its Series Disfavor, so I decided to go Elemental Overload using this Skin of the Lords. And obviously that gives a +2 level of Socketed Gems as well, which lets us cheap out and only use a level 3 Enlighten to save a bunch of money to be able to fit all of our auras in. For the gloves, we are using Kalm's Spirit. These, as it says, regenerate rage per second instead of life recovery, and your life recovery doesn't apply to you. Since we're a chieftain, our totems leech life to us, so that gives us pretty consistent good recovery, so we can get away with not having our own life regen, and just convert that into rage, so we regenerate rage really quickly, and we can use Berserk all the time for a lot of DPS and speed. The boots. We are using the new Dawn Strider boots. I've got a corruption for +1 maximum endurance charges, which we'll talk about on the next item, but these give 100% increased buff of your ancestor totems, and they make it so the buffs linger for 4 seconds after your totems disappear. So it's really nice for clearing. You can drop your totems and they'll start whacking stuff, and you can use your mega speedy leap slams that you're getting from all that extra attack speed from your totems, and even once you're out of range of your totems, it'll still last for another 4 seconds, or if they die, it'll last for another 4 seconds. So that makes it so you can leap slam around really fast all the time. Final unique item we're using here is Arn's Anguish. This turns your endurance charges into brutal charges, which give a 3% chance to deal triple damage per brutal charge. And you may have noticed in the clear footage, but I'll start putting it up here as well. We use Enduring Cry with the Chieftain node that makes it so we gain an endurance charge once a second for 4 seconds after using a War Cry. And we have a total of 10 max endurance charges, which gets converted into 10 brutal charges, and then we have an extra 3% chance to deal triple damage from a two-handed mastery. So overall, we have a 33% chance to deal triple damage, which is equivalent to 66% more damage from our belt slot. So that lets us scale our damage pretty well, even though we are not a crit build. For your other rares, you're going to need quite a lot of stats, because we're very unique heavy in the rest of the slots here, not a lot of stats available, and need quite a lot of resists as well if you want to be able to avoid having to pick up lots of resists on the tree. So, yeah, lots of stats, lots of resists, and you're going to need a pretty hefty accuracy roll somewhere as well to cap out your hit chance. And for the amulet, we are allocating the last endurance charge that we don't grab on the tree. Alright, so gem links. Our main setup is Ancestral Protector. The alt quality with the increased buff effect might be better here. I'm not sure. Since it's an active gem, it doesn't get the extra 30 quality from its Series Disfavor, so you might want to go for that extra buff effect, but I just have a default one at 2120 because you get an extra strike range at 21, so I was prioritizing that. Then we're using Awakened Melee Physical Damage, just nice DPS obviously. We're using Divergent Added Fire Damage, which gives Fizz converted to fire, and with the extra 30% quality from its Series Disfavor, it gives us 50% conversion, and then we get the other 50% from Chieftain, so that gives us 100% conversion to fire damage. Using multiple totem support, and with the quality on this being totem placement speed, again extra 30 quality, this gives us a ton of totem placement speed so we can place our totems super fast, makes our clearing really smooth and repositioning on fights really smooth. Divergent Ancestral Call here. The divergent quality is melee strike range, and again we get 10 extra melee strike range because of that 30 quality on its Series Disfavor. And then Awakened Fire Penetration is nice damage, of course, and we didn't really have another good source of exposure to be able to fit into our gem links. We're kind of tight on gem links on this build, and so the Awakened Fire Pen gives us some fire exposure and just extra fire damage with that extra quality from Atziri's Disfavor. And then I just have a quick gem swap that I can do by switching weapons and ping-ponging the gems like that to put in Wed for single target. Of course, you could go Awakened Wed here if you want. I didn't feel like the bonus from that was big enough that I felt like buying an Awakened Wed. So that's our main link setup. For our main aura setup here in the Skin of the Lords, for which we want 3 blue, 3 red, we have an Enlighten, which only needs to be level 3 because of the 2 levels that it gets from Skin of the Lords to be able to fit in all our stuff. We are using Skitterbots with Awakened Unbound Ailments. This makes it so our Skitterbots freeze and chill at pretty high values, which is pretty solid. We're using a Defiance banner for a bunch of extra armor and, reduces enemy crit chance, I guess is nice. And then we're using Petrified Blood and Determination. Over here we are reducing as close to half of our life as possible. We don't want to reserve over half because we want to be able to keep our leech going from our totems even when our Petrified Blood bar fills. So make sure you don't reserve more than half of your life. We are using Arrogance to put Precision, Vitality, and Herald of Purity over on our life bar there for some damage and some extra rage regen, and then Accuracy and Crit make it so we can keep our Ellie Overload up all the time, which it is because we have 4 totems that are attacking like almost 8 times per second each, so at only 10% crit we really easily keep Ellie Overload up. Up in the helmet here, we have Life Tap with Anomalous Flammability. The Anomalous just gives extra curse effect, so if you can get that, that's nice. And then we've got Second Wind with Enduring Cry, just so that we can use a couple of Enduring Cries, and this makes it so we can keep up all of our brutal charges really easy while mapping and bossing. Down on the boots, our final setup here, we've just got a Phantasmal Leap Slam, which has extra attack speed compared to normal Leap Slam. We've got Berserk, which, really strong, big bonuses to everything. Again, Life Tap, because we only have 5 mana, so everything has to be on Life Tap. And then we've got Vol Molten Shell, which I just keep on my left click while mapping, and then pop the Vol one if I need to. You could put the normal one here instead of on your left click if you want to be able to pop that more reactively. Flasks, we've got Granite and Basalt, a Life Flask. One kind of nice thing here is since you life tap on everything, you can use this sapping mod that makes it so it removes a chunk of the life recovered from mana in exchange for having a lot more life recovery. So this is like 4,000 life over 2 seconds, so if anything knocks us down, we can use that and pretty well recover through it. Got a Silver Flask, and then you can just put whatever utility flask you want here. I just did a Sapphire because I was doing like some Uber Elders and Shapers and stuff. But you can put whatever you want there. A Sulfur Flask might be nice. Extra regen from Consecrated Crown would be extra rage regen while you're on that, so that could be a good choice as well. You could use a Lion's Roar, and that might be worth swapping in for like your big single targets for a little extra damage. The knockback is pretty annoying in certain situations if you got like a tanky rare mob in a map or whatever that just keeps getting knocked away from your totems. So I didn't want it in for mapping, and didn't feel like hassling with swapping it for bossing. Final piece of gear here I'm using, this is what gets us up to 10 brutal charges, is I have a +1 max endurance charges relic, and I have used an invocation to put Ancestral Bond on that to save a bunch of points on the tree, similar to getting Ellie Overload on our Skin of the Lords. Look through the tree here. This is a pretty simple tree. We're not using any cluster jewels or anything fancy. We're just, going out through the life as you usually do as a Marauder, getting some two-handed stuff, and we're picking up like all of the good strike range stuff on the tree, so you get a couple strike range there. I was originally using like an Anomalous Melee Fizz, which has a little strike range instead of this Awakened Melee Fizz, but I found that it seems your totem's targeting range isn't actually like Omega far like their strike range. I was up to 70 strike range on my totems, which should be like hitting to the edges of the screens, but they weren't quite doing that, and I think it's just because their targeting range is a little low, so I ended up ditching that for the extra damage on the Awakened Melee Fizz. We go down through here. This is really our only good opportunity for a low number of points to grab the two-handed mastery for this 3 chance to deal triple damage, stack on top of all of our brutal charges. We go up here, we get a nice totem placement speed and totem attack speed stuff. I do the totem's taunt around them for 1 second when summoned. We did end up a little short on resists, so I grabbed Sentinel here for 10 resists. If I just had the regular implicit on this ring instead of the synth implicit, then I wouldn't need that, but for now we do. Life here, grab extra rage stuff. We want as much rage as possible, and that attack mastery, I got 3 additional strike range. We grab a little bit of crit and accuracy here, and precision mana reservation efficiency gets us capped out on accuracy and makes it really easy to keep up LE overload. Grab a little bit of reservation stuff here, and you need this life reservation efficiency so that you can fit those 3 things in on your life without going below 50%. We grab the extra strike range and the built-in splash here, and then an additional target there from that mastery. The fire stuff with the extra exposure. Head up, more armor life, get an endurance charge here, nice axe stuff here, particularly this enemy is killed by your hits or destroyed. That is going to just do away with any kind of annoying on death effect from enemies, because most of those are disabled by destroying the corpses of enemies. Over this way, just more life, two-handed stuff. We get our extra endurance charge here, and as I mentioned, we allocate the 3rd one on our amulet. And go down to the nice totem stuff here, Panopticon, more effect of our ancestor totem buffs, make our totems a little tankier, damage everything, and get the totem's action speed cannot be slowed. That's another pretty solid node for some boss fights that do heavy cold damage. For jewels, we are using a Forbidden Flame and a Forbidden Flesh to get Arawangwi Moon's Presence, which is this one. Makes it so your totems are immune to fire damage. This makes it so you can run reflect maps, and it's just nice damage as well, and clear because it gives AoE and makes nearby enemies deal less damage and take increased damage. It's a really solid node overall. Just use the jewels to get whichever is the cheapest out of this, or this, and then allocate the other one. In this case, it seemed like Arawangwi is the one that is the least desirable and sitting super cheap. Those jewels cost almost nothing. And then I'm using a Watcher's Eye that gives increased attack speed while affected by precision, and regenerate life while affected by vitality for more rage regeneration. For the Ascendancy here, we've got Velako Storm's Embrace. This gives us an extra endurance charge, which gets converted into a brutal charge, and makes it so we can easily generate endurance/brutal charges even when there's no enemies around, just by using any Warcry. Tukahama's War Herald. This makes it so our totems leech life to us, gives them really long activation range, which is pretty important while mapping, because as you can see, I'm usually dropping one and then like jumping away ahead of it, because there's that annoying delay when you drop it before it actually starts attacking. So you need that extra activation range so it actually kills everything behind you before it just goes back down into the totem. As I mentioned, Moon Presence here from the jewels. And then Ngamu Flames Advance, big damage every 10 seconds, and it gives us half of our conversion. And then Hinekora Death's Fury gives us fire damage, leeches life, which is nice because this totem leech actually only leeches to us. This leech will leech to the totems themselves as they're hitting enemies, which helps them stay alive through a lot. And it covers enemies in Ash, which is a nice damage boost. That's about it for the passive tree. Nothing real fancy there. And finally, for our Pantheon here, we're going Brine King. We've got a chance to avoid being frozen. Reduced effective chill on you. Good stuff. And then I'm just going with Soul of Verslaughter. This makes it so our life flask is always up when we need it. And that life regen reduction on enemies can be nice against like certain rare mods or whatever. And the increased effect is always going to apply on us because we are always on low life because of petrified blood. So even though you don't have much of a pool to work with and you can die really fast from a big dot, if you actually notice it before it kills you and slap your potion, it'll regen through a lot because of that sapping mod and the extra recovery from Soul of Verslaughter here. So that's about all there is to this build. Again, it might be kind of hard to copy it exactly if you want to because of this life tap corruption, so you might have to do something a little fancier to try and solve mana problems. But that's how I've put it together. Really fun build. I'll throw some boss fights at the end, a couple of invitations and an Uber Elder and whatever. Thank you all for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time.